Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk with Tia and Jill.
Welcome. It's nice to have you all join us out there.
And we, of course, would love to hear where are you listening from. If you're on live, let us know in the chat. Where are you listening from, watching from?
Yes, and this is actually being released in November of 2025. I don't know about you, Tia, but like this weekend was the first snow.
Really? You all ended up getting snow?
We did get a little bit. Nothing like Chicago and like Indiana got like inches and like whiteout conditions. I saw in the news,
Really?
but like we got the first bits of snow.
I did not watch the weather this weekend, so I did not know that places had snow. Even though on the local weather here, they said parts of Maryland might get snow, like West Maryland, they're more elevated. So they were saying they actually might get snow, but I didn't realize that you all actually saw inches of snow. Well, not necessarily you, but
right. Different areas of the country in the U.S.
Wow.
Maybe even Canada. So I'm curious, where people are calling, like what's happening over there for them?
Yes. Wow. Oh no, we've officially exited summer. I've kind of been holding on to it. I know. It's cold here. It's like in the 40s.
Pull.
But I'm still trying to hold on to summertime.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hey, whether it's your first time or your nth time being with us, we are glad that you're here. And this is Real Talk by Catalyst Food Leaders. Our goal here is to have honest conversations to lead people forward in food. We find that's a space and a gap that we can fill together. And today's episode is command versus commitment. What culture are you really leading?
Yeah, we're digging into the hard truth of leadership behavior, what that teaches about culture, right? And when leaders default to control, the cost is trust and ownership.
I think this fits really well with a lot of conversations we've been hearing about compliance and commitment for more specifically towards like food safety culture. But yet, right, we're always here to encourage people to think past, like it's not just culture, it's leadership that's driving culture.
Yes.
So we can't talk about commitment, like compliance to commitment culture, if we're not going to talk about compliance to commitment leadership.
Right, exactly. Because like you said, that's really what's driving your culture is people, right? The leaders and how we make decisions. And this whole piece of how are we showing up, right, as leaders, whether or not we are commanding or empowering, right? It really shows you exactly what the title's saying. Like, what type of culture are you really leading?
Yeah. But before we get into that, we have our what's trending, real or not real section.
Yes. And one thing we were kind of chatting about this right before we got on about this segment. And I was saying one thing that I like about this segment is just we're kind of figuring out like what it looks like. And we've done a few different things over the last few weeks. But this week, I wanted to address the myth around empathy in leadership. I had a conversation a few weeks ago with someone that was saying that they had to let a person go. And they were talking with this person, and this person has had some things happen in their lives with their family, some personal stuff kind of happening. And they said that they decided not to try to relate to the person, not to show empathy, because they felt like the person would start to make excuses or that they can't carry out their task of letting the person go. Now, this person was let go because they were basically showing up late, not clocking in on time. So they basically weren't, they had some issues with just like that process, right? So they kind of gone down the corrective action and they had to let this person go. But she felt like if she was to empathize with the person, then she would not have been able to do her job as a leader. And I think that is a big miss, but also myth of leadership, that empathy makes it difficult to hold people accountable, or that empathy gets in the way of communicating difficult messages.
Fascinating. As I hear you tell this story, the things that pop into my head is like, are we afraid to make this connection that the reason we might be having a team member struggle at work and it shows up as perhaps performance is because they have such a heavy load in other
Yeah.
places of their life and we really aren't able to, I guess, empathize with them and give them a little bit of flex during that time when they need it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yet we also think about as leaders, there's this part of like, gosh, if we're not fair to them, then we're not fair to others. And if we don't hold them accountable, how do we hold others accountable?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a huge piece of people not knowing how to lead with empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you still must hold people accountable, right? You have to have difficult conversations, and you can do that with empathy. And to your point, I like how you even brought up that, you know, this person might even have been struggling because there is no connection, right? Their load might be tough, or, you know, their load didn't shift when personal things were happening. If we were leading with empathy, right, our workload would shift as things happen outside in our personal life that we might have to tend to more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that you're at this point today, but if we were leading with empathy all along, then even if you had to get to that point, which I mean, many of us have been there, right? If you're an empathetic leader, you still can handle that conversation with empathy, and the person will feel that, right? Because the person has always felt empathy from you, have always felt that you connected. They just weren't able to set themselves up for success in this role. And maybe it's not the right role for them in this time in their life. I don't know. But when you lead with empathy, you know more of that information. So you're able to actually help provide better direction. And many times you can help them find their next role or their next opportunity, even if it's outside of the current organization. So when we show up in that way, you're right. Like, you really don't end up in this situation that you have to decide if you have to be empathetic or not, because you've always been that type of leader and that person knows that.
Yeah, I think that's the part that helps when it shines through, because we often talk about it as leaders, just as humans, the power of like consistency in how we show up so that people know what to expect from us.
Yes.
Coming to work and not knowing how to respond to, like, if your leader or coworkers, are they having a good day, a bad day? Is this going to set them off? Is that going to be okay? That's a lot of emotional and like mental, you always say gymnastics.
Yeah.
Like, that takes a lot of energy to try to figure out who's going to show up so you know how to respond and be. So, you know, as a leader, if you can lead with empathy and carry that through regardless of the situation, like, that's going to be the consistency that your team members need.
Yes. Yes. So with this topic, I want to remind people, right? Lead with empathy, right? It really is a myth that empathy holds people back from accountability, or, you know, you can't communicate difficult conversations or can't have difficult conversations with empathy. You 100% can. Now, we'll say you might have to work on that skill, right? Like, that's a skill. You have to, you know, learn it, practice it, reflect on it, practice again, fail, practice again, right? You have to go through that process. But it does make you a better leader, and it helps people even around you to have that empathy. So that's what I want you to remember today, as I've had different conversations with people.
You know, and Tia, as we talk about it, because I know when we started, I was kind of like, what's empathy? How's that relating in today? But it really does, from the standpoint of when we think about command versus commitment. Command and I'm going to say command and control, whether like you're overtly leading with that. You know, we're going to talk about, there's remnants of that just weave through all of our systems, that there's an element of command and power over regardless.
Yes.
But when we can lead with empathy, we are more likely going to move to commitment from people.
Yes.
Right? Exactly. That's the whole like power with, power to that we like to talk about with our empowerment models.
Yes.
Where when we lead into that, people feel it. Like, it's like, those are the people that you show up and you want to work with, because you're like, I know they're going to be more understanding. They're going to be here and hold me accountable, but yet still know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, you feel like this person cares about you, not just at work, but also outside of work. And it really even shows the flexibility that you're willing to have on a team, or you're able to pivot and switch if the organization changes. Like all of that is sort of wrapped up into this package of empathy and how you connect with others versus exactly what you're saying, this command and control aspect of it. You don't need to connect with someone to command them to do something, right? Or to control them. You actually, when you think about like, oh, I need to hold people accountable by not connecting with them, not showing empathy, you're just really commanding and controlling, right? Versus like with empathy, you're allowing for people to be themselves. Allowing for the conversation to go different ways based on also the other person versus trying to control what they do.
Yeah, and I would almost even venture to say that when we think of command, I mean that's very organizationally driven.
Yes.
Right? Like with our rules and structures, and it has to be this way. Those are the things like when people say, well, we made this decision about laying off people, but it's a business decision.
Yeah.
That's one that gets under my skin
Oh,
because
yes.
business is people. And when people say that's just a business decision, to me, that's just, I can't hold on to the fact that I needed to make a hard decision.
Right. Exactly.
Instead, just be like, I had to make some hard decisions and this is what we're doing.
Exactly.
You don't have to pawn it off and blame it as a business decision. But that's also, I think, an indication of control.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like when we do that, even as leaders, if we say, oh, it's a business decision, we're giving up our own power.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're not just giving up our own ownership, but yeah, we're giving up that power of like who we are as leaders, right? And if it's a business decision, like you said, it's people. It should all make sense to everyone, right? Because we're here in this business, and many times it doesn't because we're not actually shining a light on what's actually happening.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I don't think most leaders mean to like lead from control, but it's so ingrained in our systems. Like it is systemically in our organizations and kind of like just our society. I'd like to think that, I've probably done it as well. So it's not like I'm guilty. I'm sure I've had tendencies to do this because that's what I've seen modeled, and it's with good intentions. That doesn't necessarily always mean it's the right intentions.
Yeah, and like you said, it's things that we see, but it's also a way of leading that is actually taught, right? Like you should go in, you should be able to stand in the front, you need to have the answers, right? Like you need to be the one speaking. I've definitely had people in my career say like, well, you should be the one to talk about this. Why? Like my team's doing the work, or someone else on my team actually did it. They probably should be the one to speak about it. But we have this sense of what we think what a leader is. And then we kind of lean into that when in reality, we're kind of uplifting this command and control version of leadership. And then we wonder why we're not hitting our culture goals. We wonder why people don't feel included or feel like that they belong in a space or feel like that people hear them and see them, right? It's because we're still trying to lead from this command standpoint that's not the type of culture that we say that we want.
Yeah, and I would say especially in food, there's this really interesting, a place where you need to hold two things. I'm not going to say necessarily balance, but we value consistency in our products. Our customers like consistency in our outputs. And so there is this amount of like, how do we have SOPs and things in place for consistency, but how do we also provide space for people to think? Right? For people to be able to own these processes. And this is that space that we're talking about where how do we do that well as leaders so that we don't just get compliance? I followed the SOP I followed the SOP, but I noticed this.
Yes.
That's the commitment that we want our team members to have.
Right. Exactly. And it's funny because of the way I love the example of SOPs because especially like coming from food safety and quality, we're all about documentation. But you're right. There needs to be this flexibility or this expectation of our teams, right? And we need to be able to equip them and empower them to be able to say, yeah, this SOP is not what it should be, or we've had some changes, or there's an easier way, or whatever it happens to be. Like having that openness to say, this SOP is just words on a paper, right?
Mhm.
Like we're really actually most concerned about and, want to focus our energies on what people are doing. And then we want to document that. So as people change, right, as processes change, as equipment change, SOPs should also be changed to reflect that, not the other way around. Sometimes we write the procedure and we expect for people to follow the procedure.
Right.
When in reality, we should be working with people to get the
People
procedure
driven.
and then document it.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me too, when I hear people who are like, oh my gosh, I'm always like going. I need to be here. I need to be there. I need to be in that meeting. I need to be at this audit. I need to be. And sometimes that's a moment where I think as a leader, you can pause and be like, what is my purpose in here?
Yes.
Because while we might see it as helpful and being supportive and lending a hand, it might actually be creating this space where it feels like it's kind of a command environment.
Yes.
Just think about like if you could actually ease up a little bit on that, what space do you give your team members to really kind of rise up and be in that space and own it?
Yes. And it's funny, we see it with our clients, right? Our
Mhm.
clients that have learned how to take a step back and really empower their people, which you kind of alluded to it earlier, Jill, on our empowerment model, which is really about
Mhm.
transferring power from one person to the next. When our leaders are able to do that we work with, right, they see that team performance shift, right? They see people's behaviors shift and they're like, oh, I've been trying to do this all along, and it's like, I knew I needed to give something up. I just didn't know how to do that. So getting those skills to do it. And it's funny, we see the opposite on people, there's people in our space that we're like, you need to come work with us because we see the running around, we see the, you're at a conference, but you still have to have your laptop up. You feel like you're going from one fire to the next, and we know that you have a team, and we're like, there's something going on with your leadership, not your team, right? But your leadership to say, why do I feel like I need to be in this space? And typically it's because you have some type of command or control that you want to keep over this project, over this team, over, right? Insert what it is that you feel is something you always have to be a part of. And we see it and we're just like, we want to help you alleviate that pain of always feeling like you have to go.
Yeah.
You have to take the first step, right?
Yeah. And I think even that managing back up, because oftentimes in those situations, you're trying to collect all the information and have the data so that as soon as your boss asks you about it, you're like ready to roll.
Yes.
And your job as a leader isn't necessarily always to have the details of those things, but to be like, my team's on track and here's how I know.
Right. Yeah. And that's hard balance for some people, right? Especially high performers. I'm going to say that, especially high performers, because we're so used to doing, right? In reality, it's like once you get to a certain point in your career, you're no longer the executor, right? You're the visionary, right? You're the strategic leader. You're, you're someone that's setting that direction. You're not necessarily updating the SOPs, or you're not necessarily you're not necessarily the person that's always there on the line with people. And you don't need to be. You've already learned those skills, right? Take those skills and now do other things in the organization that we desperately need people to do. I don't know how many times we have people come to us like, oh, this organization or this leadership really just doesn't have a vision. A lot of times they're working in the weeds, right? They're in other people's business. It's funny, like Tiana started saying like, not your business, or we'll be like, not your business. Like, you're in other people's business, right? Get out of other people's business and stay with your business because we need you to do that work.
Yeah. This is a great place when we think about mindset and self-awareness, where we can really pause to be like, how are people experiencing my leadership?
Yes.
Because we may have the best intentions, but if it's not received with the same intention, then that might be a space that we really can have some clarity on where we want to go.
Yeah.
And I think with that, it doesn't mean that it happens all the time. Like
Mhm.
there's certainly, I can even look back and think about, there were projects where I'm like, I know nothing about that. And it was easier to not take control
Mm-hmm.
because I did not know. It
Right.
forced me into asking bigger, better questions and trusting my team more
Yes.
than the things where I was like, oh, I know this intimately. Like I know exactly, like we were talking with some the other week where they're like, I need my document control to look exactly like this, and this, but I need somebody else to do it. And I was like, that might be a challenge. Like
Right.
what parts can you let go of? Like what's really important in this for you to
Yes.
move forward?
Yes. 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 And it's hard to do, right? It's hard to do without someone asking those questions of like, what's really important, right? How do
Mhm.
people see your leadership?
Yeah.
You know?
But no worries. That's why today we have 3 shifts,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That can help people to think about how do I go from control to commitment?
Mm-hmm.
And that's in our leadership. Because
Yes.
once again, if we think about culture, like this culture can't change until we here as individual leaders
Yes.
start shifting how we're showing up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're starting. We're starting at this level because that's where the change happens, not up
Absolutely.
here. That's
Right.
just the output of all this here.
Yes.
I
Right.
know, I know you already know this, but right. So often leadership gets taken out of this conversation about culture, except for we need leader buy-in. That's not it.
That's not it. Yes.
We really want you to walk away today and be like, oh, I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. 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 And these 3 culture shifts, we hope will get you there, or at least have you start thinking about what type of behaviors do I need to shift as a
Mhm.
leader to move my culture forward? Because just like you're saying, Jill, like it really does start at the leadership level. I like the way you put it too. Like what the culture things that we are saying, like all of those are outputs. It really starts with your leadership. It's like
Yes.
lead and lag metrics, right?
Yes. Culture's
Mhm,
just, yeah. Oh, that's a good one, Tia. Yeah,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
All right.
Let's talk
Number
about the
one,
first one. Yes, yes.
from rules to ownership.
Yes. Yes, from rules to ownership. I think that this is a great one because we want people to stop enforcing and start empowering.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I mean, you brought up food safety culture earlier, right? Like that's a big one around it because we focus so much on the food safety instead of the culture that all we're doing is trying to enforce versus
Yeah,
empower.
we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even as you look at, I think about, I'm going to use a technician as an example, right? They usually have a list of things that they're doing, pretty heavy activities out on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
In that list, there's probably a few like, like a HACCP check or, insert that you're like, those need to be done at these specific times in this specific way. But the other things, like how much flex do they have?
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is part of it where there's some things we might have to enforce, but yet
Mm-hmm.
how do we better empower?
Yes.
I mean, we don't live in the la la land to think like, gosh, like everything is just whatever somebody else wants. But
Right.
this is the partnership of like, where do we build and how do we help shift from less rules to more ownership?
Right. Exactly. This made me think about like just the conversation around rules versus boundaries. And this is like a big conversation in like the parenting world right now. Maybe that should have even been the trending topic. But this whole piece around how in reality, like moving away from rules and really understanding your own boundaries. And so like, when I was really trying to work on this exact thing, this is something that I intentionally worked on as a leader of how do I step away from these rules, but setting clear boundaries.
Mm.
Where rules is really around trying to command and dictate others' behaviors. Boundaries are more about limits. So boundaries is, hey, like we have to do these HACCP checks because of these reasons. So we can't go outside of this, right? These are your boundaries. Everything else in there, do what you will, right? And one thing that's important when you look at it that way, it actually helps you get clear as a leader Because if you have to set the boundaries and allow for people to play within, you'll know pretty early if you were clear, right? The first draft that comes back to you, you're going to be like, oh yeah, my boundaries were not clear on what limits to stay in, right? But over time, you actually get better at it, where it's like, okay, I need to mention this. These are the things we need to make sure we keep into consideration. You go and you solve and you flex and you, right, like you are empowered to be and do whatever you need to do within these boundaries, right, within these limits. And it could be, regulatory limits. It could also be company limits, right? Like these are the things that we value. And it could be, as I think this is one that people relate to. We do the right thing all the time, right? So if that's a value for us, it's like, yeah, go out and do and solve problems, but at the end of the day, it needs to be the right thing, right? We're not going to curse people out or things like that, because that's not how we live here. So that's not an option, even though it might be effective, or you might feel like it's effective. We don't do that here because that's not who we are. So that's your boundary.
Yeah, no, it's a great example of like providing the things that need to happen and letting people figure out the details of how to make that happen.
Yes.
We did that, years ago when I was managing our corporate analytical lab. And we were corporate. We ran Monday through Friday. And I was like, gosh, our tests don't all end on Friday. And our plants don't all shut down on the weekend.
Right.
For us to be the best support we can be, we need to figure out how we're going to support our plants better over the weekend when they operate. Not asking for fully staffed or all tests, but like, what are the things that actually need to get done?
Right. Yeah.
So that we can support them. And our team was kind of like, I don't know. Like there were some people who were like, I don't want to work any weekends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave it to you all to figure out. How do we flex? How do we do this? But our goal is to support the plants and, at the time, feed mills, everybody else, in the way that serves them.
Yeah. Right.
And it's interesting to see people kind of walk through different scenarios. And some people were ready to jump in, and of course others weren't. But I didn't have to make a plan. I didn't have to give them rules. I just had to say, what you said, here are the boundaries of what we need to do. Like you guys get to own how you want to schedule, how things flow through. I'll be here to support that, but I need you to own it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's a great example, right? You're like, I'm not telling you how to do it, right? Like that's up to you, because you know yourselves, you know your team, right? You know what you have going on. We just need to make sure we support.
Yes. Like the business has changed on how we operate, but the lab has not kept up.
Yeah.
How are we going to do that?
Like that's scary for some people.
It was really scary. No, I mean, it was like, we had somebody who decided to leave. Like that was not going to be part of their future, which was really unfortunate. But yet for us to be able to move forward and support our organization the way that they needed. I mean, we had them like storing samples in spots, and then they'd fall over and then they'd lose them. And that kind of stuff was happening because it just couldn't flow. I mean, we were cutting off the flow. So we had to shift to better support. But once again, how we did that was for the people doing the work to figure out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that you also brought up that, you actually end up losing a person as a part of this. And like that happens, but that just means that this is not going forward, right? This is not a good fit for that person, but they know what's going on, right? And you allow them to create this environment to say, okay, how must we function to support, the teams that we're supporting? And if someone's like, I love that, that's probably the right path, but this is not for me. I need something different. Even that's much better than trying to force everyone into a direction that you think is best for the team. And then you end up having 5 people that are disgruntled, not engaged, right? Not a part of it. So we're not, and I say that to say, we're not saying that as you start to shift your culture, people are like, not for me, right? Like that will happen, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue down your path,
Right.
especially as you move towards a culture that is more about empowerment and ownership.
Yes. And, I think there's always this other side where people are like, well, they don't want to take ownership. People
No,
don't want to take ownership. Is that real?
and I don't think it is. I mean, honestly, I don't think I've ever met a person that doesn't want ownership of their lives. What they're doing and how they act, how they behave. I don't think I've ever met a person that's like, I want everyone to command and control the things that I do.
Right. But I do see at work times where people are like, I don't want to own that because
Mm-hmm.
perhaps expectations aren't clear.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps being fair
Right.
isn't something that they've seen happen in these spaces or roles before,
Mm-hmm.
or there's other things.
There's other things, right?
And so I think when we as leaders have people who are like, they don't really want to own it, they just want to show up, punch the clock, and then walk out, I would definitely invite you to revisit that.
Yes.
Because I don't think there's a person who's like, please just tell me always what to do.
Right.
That comes from a attitude of like kind of this complacency
Mm-hmm.
because they've probably not been valued, not been heard, not been
Right.
seen, not been
Exactly.
trusted. They've seen stuff happen to other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're 100% correct, right? And there are people, right, that's like, yeah, I don't get involved in those things anymore, right? Like once you have some conversation, you're like, okay, what's really going on? Yeah, I don't, because like you said, they're not heard, or maybe they did have ownership of it and it was taken away.
Yeah. And so I think some leaders mistake that as, well, I just need to have commands and I need to give them rules and tell them what to do.
Yes.
But really, there's more going on there. And I love that we have this quote here from, and I'm not really sure how to say Doug's last name, Connett. He was the former CEO of Campbell Soup. And he said, nothing of significance is accomplished when people don't care.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty powerful. And when we're in rules, it's way easier for people to not really care because not only have you not transferred power to them, you really can't hold them accountable.
Right. Yeah.
You may think you can, but they're like, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they don't protect it as much if it's not theirs.
Right.
We talk about that where it's like people protect the things that they own, that they feel like they own. Right. And when you talk about, I love this quote because like the opposite of that, right, is things that are significant are accomplished because people do care.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about what we do in the food industry every day, like we're actually doing some pretty significant things, right? We're feeding a lot of people. To show up every day in a food environment and like work towards that, like that's pretty significant. So when you hear things like people don't care or like, oh, this person just clocks in and then leaves, like once you hear that, the first step is to think that something else is going on.
Yeah, that should be like radars going off. Like,
right, exactly.
What's happening here?
Exactly. Right. So if you're looking for like just how leadership, if you hear that, the next step is for you to say, I need to dig deeper. Mm-hmm. Because there's always something underneath it. Because you would not be able to do the significant things that you do if you did not have people that care.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that actually sits into the next thing that we talk about that needs to shift, which is going from fear to belonging. I think if somebody steps out and they're like, nope, I don't care, that's not me, there's probably something related to fear behind that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's a reason why they feel like they can't speak up. Mm-hmm. Or there's a reason why that they can't voice their opinions. Or there's a reason why they don't want to pick up the ownership.
Yeah, because fear shuts people down.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they're like, nope, I'm just going to show up, there's more behind there.
There's more behind it, right? Mm-hmm. I love this connection too of like fear and belonging, because I think people don't see them as like, okay, I'm going to move from fear to belonging. Mm-hmm. And I love that setup, because with this fear of being shut down, or you feel like your team is just shut down, a lot of people try to say, well, let me have more conversations, or let me talk to them about what they're fearful about. Like, I would even just stop and say, how do I make them feel like they belong here? Mm-hmm. And that's even outside of the fear that they feel, outside of the ownership. How do I say, man, I really feel like my team is shut down? How do I create an environment, an activity, something to make them feel like that they belong, even if it's within just our team, how do I, because then that sense of belonging, right, leads to feeling safe. It builds trust, right? You learn more about the person, so that helps you build a relationship. Like belonging is at this core center.
Mm-hmm. And nothing says belonging more than like, I'm committed to you and your success.
Right.
So as a leader, if when we can share that, then that in turn has people who are like, well, then I'm committed to your success as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when we all feel like we belong, I am committed to your success, right? And I feel like you're committed to mine. Like that's a part of this sense of belonging, is this psychological safety, the safe space that we're in this together.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I don't know about you, but I mean, I've worked with people where maybe I've held them like arm's length away, or I feel like they're holding me an arm's length away, maybe sometimes even longer. Like that, I think, is when you sense that, once again, that is the place where you should be like, what's happening here?
Right, exactly.
And it doesn't mean to be disrespectful, that maybe some space is needed, but if they're far away, like creating belonging means bringing people closer together.
Yes.
And so if we don't look at that as an opportunity to understand what's really happening there, we're going to keep people an arm distance away, which keeps them kind of shut down.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like you said, there's also fear behind that, right? Mm-hmm. There's fear of something, and really needing to figure out where is that coming from. That makes me think of an operations leader who I kind of felt that way. Like he definitely kept quality, food safety an arm's length or more away. And I felt that between him and I. Nice guy for the most part, but I could still feel like there was a distance, and that distance kind of lived there for a while until like things blew up, where it was like, at some point it kind of got to like, hey, we're on the same team here. And we actually had like a conversation, him and I, and when I actually had conversation, I learned more about it. He actually had this fear because in the past, his quality support, his food safety support was not a team player. And it actually caused some issues during an audit. He really wasn't getting help in this area. And so he shut down, right? That fear led to shut down. And instead of addressing it with that person, right, he assumed everyone else was the very same way, or he just kind of kept us away, right? Like, I don't even know if he assumed everyone was like that, or if he just decided, I'm just going to keep you away, right? And so once we had this conversation, we got on the same page of like, we know that we're having issues with one of our team member just being a team player, right? Those are internal conversations that we're having. We knew that person was a problem on the team. So just like he felt it, right? So yes, these things are happening, but you keeping everyone at arm's length away, these are the problems that's coming up. And then it's like, okay, I see it, right? Like I no longer have this sense of fear around the food safety and quality team. Now I have this sense of, okay, we do belong together on this team. We're just having an issue with a person versus an issue with the whole team. And then we felt like, yeah, we are on the same team, right? We do belong together. We do work well together. And then, I mean, it completely changed even the type of conversations that we had because of that one conversation of us getting into a room and saying, hey, what's really going on here?
Yeah. And that one, like you said, you kind of feel like it's an arm length away. And I think when we look at this, it doesn't mean that we're going to have, like, this is a spectrum.
Yes.
There are going to be people who are much closer to this, like, I feel like I belong. There's going to be people right on the outside of it, and then people who really are on the other side. But I think this is where, once again, as a leader, like having these individual conversations with everyone and opening the space so that you can see, like, well, what has you over here on this, on this continuous spectrum versus over here? Like, what would that take?
Yeah.
That's important because not everybody is going to sit in the spot like where it feels like overt fear over here. It might be masked, and people are good at hiding things. Super good. You may be like, oh, I know them really well. We're friends, blah, 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 blah. Do you really?
You're right. Exactly.
And I say that because I would say every week I hear someone who's like, oh my gosh, I had somebody on my team put in their notice and I had no idea.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, that once again is one of those little radar things going off, the bing, bing, bing. Like the sense of belonging was not there.
Right. You
Yeah.
know, and that's exactly where we're always like, how did you not know, right? But it's so common. I mean, you're right. I think we probably have had someone like once a week have said the same thing, like someone turned in their notice.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's very quickly, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, this person that is a rock star on our team turned in their notice, right?
Yeah.
And I just had no idea around it. And you're right, it comes down to belonging. You know, does this person feel like they belong here? Do they feel like that they can get work done here? That they
Do I
can
feel
shift?
like there's trust?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of goes to the next thing on like, how do we shift from command to commitment, which is going from this silence to presence. Like
yes.
the not talking about things to like being here with each other to actually look, understand, feel.
I feel like this one is something that leaders do all the time is they go silent. You know, they lack this transparency around what's happening in the organization. And it's true, when leaders go silent, teams make up stories about what's happening.
Gosh, hello, Severance.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
One of our favorite shows, Severance. You know,
when is the next season coming out?
I know. I have no idea. I should have looked it up before so I could be like, coming out. Yeah. I mean, if you haven't watched Severance on Apple TV, I definitely say watch it. But there's so many parallels to company culture. And one is, if you don't know what's going on, right? If your team does not know, they will come up with stories, right, on what is going on and what things mean and what direction you're going in. And if you can just even hear the stories, you'll be like, wait, how did they get that? Well, you've told them nothing, right? Or they have pieces of information, or someone maybe heard a rumor and then they told someone and that partnered with this information that they're trying to piece together. This whole story has all of a sudden come about. And it may be true, it may not be true. We don't know, right? But we do know that the teams are acting on it. They're feeling it, right? They're shaping their opinions, right? When we talk about culture, the norms, the assumptions, right? The what people think about the organization, they're shaping all of that. And you've said nothing as a
Yeah, and that can be a really tricky space to be in. And I think sometimes there's this, once again, this misunderstanding or misuse probably a better thing, of the knowledge is power. Right? When we think about like developing people and like giving people freedom of choice and all these things, knowledge is power.
Yes.
Like we owe that to our team members and for our organization to build capacities within people in our places.
Yes.
But when we misuse that and hold it as power, knowledge is power for myself.
Right.
That's right. That's like the Darth Vader side of it. Like I'm just holding it close.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of people, a lot of leaders, I would say, they struggle with, well, there's information that I know that I can't share. Yeah. How can I be transparent when I literally am not able to share that information? And I would say people know that you have information that you cannot share. That's not a secret. So if you say to your team, there are conversations that are happening and it hasn't been decided on, and I can't share those details, but as soon as they become available, I will let this team know. Yeah. That's transparency, because people know, right? We know we know the CEO knows things that's going to happen before we know them. Yeah. That's not a secret. No. So when we pretend as leaders that, oh, we don't have information or we have no idea or right? Like that's, I mean, frankly, it's lying, right? It's lying because you do have information. You just can't say it because of your role. It's okay to tell your team that.
And sometimes I like to think of presence as being able to be in this space with what is versus not being able to be in that space or
Yeah.
wishing it was different. So,
Yes.
even when you have that moment where you're wondering, like, what can I share? If you can show up and be present for your team, and that's exactly what you just talked about.
Yeah.
Like, I can show up and just be present.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean I have the answers. It doesn't mean I can make it all work. It doesn't mean I can make things happen, but I can be present here with you and hold this space while we figure it out.
Right. Right.
That's
Exactly.
presence.
Mm-hmm. I was talking with someone the other day around like plant closures, and when I worked at General Mills, they closed, and I worked at the Yoplait plant. They closed a couple of Yoplait sites when I was there, and I remember before that happened. I had a training or something that I was giving to the operations team. So large groups were there, and I remember them like kind of talking to me about like, oh, General Mills, they're going to close a plant. And for me, first of all, I don't have this information, right? I'm not privy to those conversations, but I was just present, right? I didn't have to provide any information. I really just needed to listen to their fears. I needed to listen to, whatever they wanted to share. And they were, concerned that there's plants shutting down. Is it going to be our plant? Well, I don't think it's going to be our plant. I'm like literally conversations like that is like swirling and like just right in front of me. But again, I don't have any information to give them, and in reality, I literally had zero information, right? They're not telling the quality engineer at the site, right, about these things. But I was still present. They actually weren't even asking me for information. They really just wanted to say their fears out loud. And so as a leader, sometimes you feel like, man, they're going to ask me these tough questions and I'm going to have to tell them I don't know, or I'm going to have to tell them. Sometimes you just need to be there.
Just hold
you
space.
Just need to listen.
Hold space.
Right?
Yes.
For people to be able to say, this is what I'm fearful of. This is what I'm happy about. Like, just even think about the times when people are happy, like, ooh, this is going to happen. And like, ooh, we're going to have this big party at the end of the year. Someone said it, right? Okay, I don't know if they are or not, right? Or maybe I do know, or I don't know, right? But to hold that space and be present, to hear what are people saying, how are people responding, what are type of words that they're using, because that will even help you be a better leader.
Yes. All right, we've gone through a few, and before we kind of go into summarizing them, one thing I want to know to you is, can you share one thing that you've shifted in your leadership that moved from control to trust?
Honestly, the biggest one is probably the first one, right? Moving from these rules to ownership, where I have this vision. I love the example that where you talked about someone where it's like the SOP has to look like this, has to be structured like this, has to be right. Like, I feel like that's so relatable because we know the way that we learned it, right? And for some reason, that's the only way it can be. But there are so many different ways to write SOPs. And I remember specifically when I led a sanitation team, we were revamping our basically SOPs. And the team was going to update their SOPs based off of their task. And I remember like the first version that came to me, I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back and think about what are the boundaries, right? Like when I really talk about like, it really helps you be clear as a leader. I learned that through this process of removing myself from like, it doesn't have to look the way Tia sees it in her mind. So when someone brings me something, does it have everything I needed to have? And then if there's things outside of that, then let's talk about that. Everything else, I'm going to approve. I'm going to accept. These are theirs, right? It doesn't belong to me. These SOPs are going to be here even after they leave, right? After I leave, right? They're still going to be using them. So they need to set up a process. They need to set up these things. And it was hard, but that was one shift, and a shift that I truly, truly, truly believe in is how do you move from setting up these rules and commanding to empowering and allowing people to really own what they're doing.
Nice.
What about you? What have you shifted?
Yeah. As you're talking about that, what came to mind was really shifting mindset first. I remember, once again, this is that like stereotypical thing that whether you realize it or not, as a technical leader, you're probably challenged with, because we've been looked to so often to be the one with all the answers.
Yeah.
And so even when I was like managing people, I'm going to say managing because I wasn't leading probably at this point. I mean, I was acting more commandish and managerish, but that's because I was holding on to this belief in my head that to be in this role, I had to know just as much, if not more, than the people that were on my team in these areas. Yeah. Right? Because I needed to be the micro expert. I needed to be the lab expert. I needed to be the quality system expert. I did labeling. I needed to be the regulatory expert. Like I needed to know all that stuff.
Yes.
When I finally shifted in my head, like, and part of it was probably a bit of overwhelm. Like I cannot keep up with all of it.
Yeah.
That was the shift to be like, I need to trust the people on my team to be able to do that. And I need to figure out like, what is it that I need to be able to let them do that? But what do I need so that I can feel like I'm staying informed enough to be supportive for them, but also making good decisions for the organization yet?
Yeah. So you felt like you were running around trying to do all this stuff when in reality you need to trust your team.
Yeah. Yeah. And right, we see that with clients that still do that, where they're like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I got to get over here and I got to go over that. And it's like, that's a good classic sign. And I know because I was in it.
Right. Yeah.
That I don't trust. And it was never the intention to be commanding or controlling, but it was really for me, probably, wow, we're going to go deep today, probably a lack of confidence in like, will people think I'm smart enough to be in this role?
Ooh. Yeah. Right? So you have to show that you're smart enough to be in the role.
Right. Instead of being like, being the best version in this role that this role needs and for these people is that I don't need to know all the details.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing, because it's like, even like you were looking outward, right? Looking outward on like, I want other people to know versus saying like, okay, who do I need to be for this team, for this organization? That's so insightful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you get when you go through it, right? And that, but I think that also is part of the journey of like stepping back to be like, what kind of leader do people experience with me?
Yes.
And how do I want them to experience me? Because I did not want them to be like, she's commanding and controlling. I didn't want them muttering under their breath like, oh, here she goes again. We've all done that. Right? And that's a good wake-up call.
Oh, I love that.
But of course, I mean, I know this is kind of a lead-in, but like if you're like, I might need to take a pause and see what that's like, then Reset Week, our Leadership Reset Week, which is next week, is for you.
It is. It is. It is for you to really reset and think about, what type of leader do I want to be, right?
Yes. And you go to if you go to our webpage, well, actually first sign up for our emails, because that's where you're going to get the most. Subscribe to our emails and make sure you confirm your subscription. That's where you're going to get all the information. But if you go to our Catalyst Food Leaders /reset-week, you're going to get there. And I don't have the QR code to put up today, but it's out on our LinkedIn. It's connected in our blog, so you'll find it. But that is the place to be.
Oh, there you go.
Fantastic.
Yes, we are excited to see you next week and, really help you walk away with tools to lead culture on purpose.
Yeah,
right?
Like have a plan.
Yeah, have a plan, right?
As you go into 2026, because leading how you lead today is good, but we all know you want to be.
So if these 3 shifts from rules to ownership, fear to belonging, silence to presence, are these 3 shifts really help you transform from compliance to commitment, right? And if these really triggered something for you to start thinking about, what type of leader do I want to be, right? How do I want people to see my leadership? And if you find that you might be more in the command space than the commitment space, we invite you to be a part of Reset Week next week and explore that.
Yes. Yes. And after you sign up, you'll also then get access to our free download, Culture Change Starts With You, which is actually available under our resource hub as well. So you can grab
Yes.
it there, a copy as well.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that's where you can get started even before next week if you're like, I'd like to really sit with this for a few minutes.
So super easy. You can use the QR code, go to our website. It's there, sign up. We would love to see you next week during Reset.
Yeah. Yep. So, you know, culture doesn't shift unless leadership does. We hope that's part of the takeaway you had from today. And of course, leadership won't shift unless you choose to shift.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the real talk we're leaving you with today.
Be intentional. And so we want to say thank you. Thank you for being here with us today and being a part of the conversation. You know, if this did spark something for you, we ask you to share it with someone that's leading with heart and with grit, and subscribe so you can catch our next conversation. We are live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Time. And remember, right, like when leaders grow, cultures do change. And that's what we talk about here on Real Talk. And we're happy to have you a part of that conversation.
Absolutely.
Until next week,
We'll
we
see you
will.
then.
Bye, everyone.